Welcome back, you scrub lords, to another episode of Devblog Chats, where I ramble on for the next few minutes talking about some new additions coming to War Thunder. This time we are covering the T29 Experimental Heavy Tank. This is going to be a premium Tier 4 6.7 battle rating heavy tank for the US tech tree. And all I can say is that it's about time. If you aren't familiar with the current meta right now for the American heavy tanks, it's that they really don't have a good heavy tank. They have the Super Pershing, the T26E4 in this case, or the T26E1, I believe it's called in-game, or they've got the T32, which is a 7.3 battle rating machine, which is thrown up against 8.0 battle rating tanks simply because it's got some decent armoring on it. However, what the Americans really need is a heavy tank that is heavily armored enough and armed with a big enough gun that it can take on not only Tiger II, but also IS-3 and early T-54s if it very well needs to. Enter the T29. Now, originally the T29 was developed to take on vehicles like Tiger II in Europe. They had found that the M26 Pershing, or at the time it was called the T26 Pershing, was simply not armored or armed well enough to effectively deal with that vehicle. Even with the 90mm gun they had put on it, it just wasn't doing the trick. So they needed something a little bit bigger and a little more heavily armored. Now, if you were to look closely at the T29, you might notice that the hull looks pretty similar to something that we already have in game. Yes, that is a very heavily modified T26E1 hull. They extended it out a little bit and added a few more road wheels. The hull armor really isn't anything that special. It's 127mm sloped back at I think at about 50 or 60 degrees, which provides adequate protection for against something like a Panther or a Tiger I. I'm going to go out on a limb here, however, and say that that's just not enough to withstand Tiger II's 88mm gun, at least not in my opinion. From what we've seen of IS-2s and IS-1s, Tiger IIs will go right through their 120mm upper plate without much trouble at all. Also, the lower glacis is a pretty big weak spot, and it's 95mm effective thickness, so you can't count on this thing bouncing a lot of shots with its hull armor. However, where this thing really shines is in its turret armor. The gun mantlet affixed to this vehicle has around 279mm of armor. That's actually more armor than the mouse can penetrate. Combine that with 10 or 12 degrees of gun depression. As I was watching the stream the other day, it looked like 12 degrees. It's going to be probably one of the best ridgeline snipers that you could ever have at 6.7. When you play this vehicle, you're going to want to hug ridges as if they are your waifu. However, there is still some more bad news, unfortunately. And whether you call this good news or bad news is entirely up to you, but in my opinion, it's bad news. The bad news about this tank is that not only is it premium, but it's also armed with the same or similar gun-performing 105mm gun that you get on the T95, which is a real stinker if you guys have seen my Unicorn review. The problem with this gun is its post-penetration damage. It's got plenty of penetration, about 248mm, which is very good for its tier, but the biggest issue with that is the fact that you can penetrate the target, but once you penetrate the target, unless you hit something vital, it's not going to destroy the enemy vehicle. And if this thing's reload is going to be similar to the T95, it's going to be a really rough time, especially if you are being rushed by multiple enemy tanks and you need a high rate of fire in order to deal with them. I doubt this vehicle is simply going to be able to do that, which is very unlike the British tanks, which the British tanks fire only solid shot armor piercing rounds, but the key difference is that they have the rate of fire. They can pump out round after round after round within a very, very short period of time, whereas the 105mm gun on the T29 is most likely going to have a 15 or 16 second reload at best. So I think the key to playing this vehicle is going to have to be sit back, stay on a ridgeline, only expose your turret armor, and then pick off enemy vehicles by taking critical shots at them. An example may be being take out their engine first and then go for their ammo racks, or take out their ability to react, maybe take out their gunner and driver, along those lines. So I guess the real question here is, am I excited for it? Yeah, I am pretty excited for it, but at the same time, I'm not pinning all my hopes and dreams on it. The fact that it's going to be premium is really going to restrict it on the battlefield, and the fact that it's going to be a tier 4 premium is going to restrict it even more. Then again, I could always be proven wrong. I mean, the T34-100 is probably a perfect example of this, having flooded the matchmaker for the first few weeks of it being in the game, but regardless, at this point, we're just going to have to wait and see. I think I've rambled on long enough here on the T29, a heavy tank, and what its uses are going to be for the coming patch. If you liked the video, please drop a like. If you didn't like it, I totally understand. Please drop a dislike. And at the same time, if you guys are interested in hearing my talk on ATGMs that I did last week, feel free to click the annotation on your screen right there. Please leave a comment on what your thoughts are on this new heavy tank. How do you think it's going to affect the meta? Are you excited for it? Or do you have absolutely no interest in this vehicle and you've just wasted the last 5 minutes of your life? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you later this week on the Super Unicorn Review.